You know that feeling where you've slept what feels like a decent amount of time, maybe even think you slept pretty well, but then mid-morning hits and you're just dragging.
Oh, definitely. Or maybe noticing stairs feel tougher.
Exactly. Like your legs aren't quite as springy,
Hmm.
and those little bursts of energy gone too quick. It's so easy to just think, well, that's just part of getting older.
Is such a common assumption, yeah. We often just put these gradual shifts down to the natural aging process.
But something I came across recently really made me stop and think. It turns out that a surprisingly large number of people over the age of 60, get this, around 1 in 3, might actually be dealing with a protein deficiency and not even realize it.
Wow, 1 in 3. That's a really significant number, and it highlights just how easily this can fly under the radar.
And it's not like the consequences are small things. We're talking about your muscles feeling weaker, maybe those little injuries taking ages to heal,
Catching colds more often?
yeah, catching colds more often, and even changes in your mood and how sharp you feel mentally.
Exactly. And what makes it so tricky is that these aren't always obvious dramatic symptoms. It's not like one day you suddenly can't lift anything.
Yeah.
It's more about these, little by little changes that we tend to brush off.
Right, those little nudges. Maybe your skin doesn't feel quite the same. You just don't have that same get up and go. Or there's just this nagging feeling that something's a little bit off. It doesn't exactly shout, hey, you need more protein.
Which is exactly why so many people miss these early clues until maybe things become more noticeable down the line.
But the encouraging news is that it seems like this is something we can actually do something about. Apparently, lots of folks in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s have found themselves with more energy, better balance, and even clearer thinking simply by tweaking how much protein they're getting.
Yes, and it's great to see solid research backing this up now. Studies from places like Tufts University and the National Institute on Aging have shown that getting enough of the right kind of protein, when you need it, can really help slow down that natural muscle loss. Keep your immune system strong and even play a role in how you feel and how well you remember things.
So in this deep dive, we really wanted to unpack those quiet little signals our bodies might be sending, those 5 subtle but really important signs that you might need to think about upping your protein intake. And honestly, the third and especially the fifth one on this list, they're the ones that I think a lot of us just completely miss.
They absolutely are. We tend to look for the more obvious signs, don't we?
Mm.
But our bodies communicate in so many different ways.
Now, if any of this is striking a chord with you, if you've ever felt that constant tiredness or a general sense of weakness without a clear reason, just a quick tap of that like button helps us share this information with more people who might be looking for some answers. Okay, so let's dive into this first sign, shall we?
Absolutely. Let's start with number 1.
Okay, sign number 1. You're losing muscle, and it might be happening without you even trying to. This isn't about actively trying to lose weight or anything like that.
No, it's more subtle.
Yeah, it's more about noticing these little changes. Maybe your arms just feel a little softer when you grab them. Or climbing a flight of stairs feels like a bigger effort. Your legs not quite as powerful.
Or even simple things like twisting open a jar.
Right. Or carrying a bag of groceries might suddenly feel like they take more oomph than they used to.
These are exactly the kinds of subtle things that can easily get dismissed as just, well, a normal part of aging.
Exactly. But here's what's interesting. Once you hit 60, your body naturally starts to lose muscle mass anyway. We're talking about around 1 to 2% every single year.
Which is already significant.
It is. And if you're not getting enough protein in your diet, that rate of loss can actually double. Think of protein as the glue, perhaps, that holds your muscles together as you age.
Yeah.
Without enough, that glue weakens, making everyday movements harder.
Double. Wow. That's a really significant acceleration of muscle loss. And it's why making sure you're getting enough protein becomes so critical as we get older.
And there's a specific term for this, right? Sarcopenia. It sounds a bit scientific.
It does, yeah, sarcopenia.
Yeah.
But it simply refers to age-related muscle loss. And it's so important to remember that muscle is about so much more than just how we look.
Oh,
It's what allows us to do all those everyday things we often take for granted. Standing up from a chair, walking around the house, getting in and out of bed, even just lifting everyday objects.
Mm-hmm.
It really is about maintaining our independence as we age.
Absolutely. It's what keeps us doing the things we love, and staying active keeps us independent.
Precisely. And protein is the fundamental building block that our muscles need to stay healthy and strong. Think of it like this. If your roof needs repairing after a storm, you need the right materials. You need shingles, right? Your body can try to maintain and repair muscle, but without enough protein, it's missing those essential raw materials. It can't do the job properly.
That's a really clear way to put it. And I saw a statistic that really highlighted this. Apparently, older adults who aren't getting enough protein on a daily basis are twice as likely to have trouble with their mobility and those everyday tasks.
Twice as likely.
Mm-hmm.
That statistic really emphasizes the real-world impact of not getting enough protein on our ability to stay active
Yeah.
and independent. It's not trivial.
So the big question then becomes, how much protein do we actually need, especially as we get older? Because I think a lot of us might still be going by, well, older recommendations.
That's a great point. Current thinking, especially for those over 60, actually suggests we need more than what was traditionally recommended.
Oh.
Most experts now advise aiming for at least 1 to 1.2 grams of protein for every kilogram of body weight.
Okay, let's try to put that in perspective. So for someone who weighs around 150 pounds, which is roughly, 68 kilograms?
About that, yeah.
That would mean they should be aiming for somewhere in the neighborhood of 68 to 82 grams of protein each day. That's quite a bit more than the 40 or 50 grams some older adults might still think is sufficient. That's roughly the amount of protein you might find in, say, a large chicken breast, plus a decent-sized cup of Greek yogurt.
Exactly. And if you're consistently falling short of that range, your muscles can gradually start to shrink, even if you're staying physically active. Exercise is crucial, of course.
Of course.
But without the necessary protein, your body can't effectively rebuild and repair those muscle tissues after you've used them.
And I think that's such an important thing to realize. You could be out for your regular walks or spending time in the garden, doing all the right things physically.
Right.
But if you're not fueling your body with enough protein, you're still not giving it what it needs to maintain that muscle mass.
That's absolutely right. And the danger, as we mentioned earlier, is that people often just chalk these subtle losses up to just getting older instead of recognizing it as a sign that their body is really craving those repair materials.
So what are some first steps someone could take if they're starting to notice these little hints of muscle loss, maybe feeling a bit softer or weaker?
Well, the first thing is to consciously try to include good sources of protein with every meal.
Mm-hmm.
Think about things like eggs for breakfast, maybe some chicken or fish at lunchtime and dinner. Greek yogurt makes a great snack in the afternoon. Or even incorporating things like beans and lentils into your meals more often. Some people also find a balanced protein shake can be a convenient way to supplement their intake, especially if appetite is low.
Right. Good point. We'll definitely have to dig into more specific food ideas in a future conversation. But for now, the key thing to remember with this first sign is that noticing these little dips in strength isn't just about wishing you were stronger for the sake of it. It's a real signal from your body that it needs more of those building blocks.
Precisely. It's about looking after your physical well-being and your ability to stay independent and active for longer.
Okay, so we've talked about that subtle muscle loss. What's the second quiet sign that our bodies might be hinting we need more protein?
The second sign is experiencing this persistent feeling of tiredness, even when you feel like you've had a full night's sleep.
Ah, yes. That feeling of going to bed at a decent hour, maybe you even slept soundly all night, but you still wake up feeling like you haven't recharged at all.
Exactly.
And then that energy just seems to vanish by midday, no matter how much coffee you might be drinking. It can be so frustrating. The key takeaway here, I guess, that persistent tiredness might not be just age, but your body screaming for fuel at a cellular level.
It is incredibly frustrating, and it's a really common experience, especially as we get older. While it's easy to just assume low energy is part of aging, it's often directly connected to what we can think of as low protein fatigue.
Low protein fatigue. That's an interesting way to describe it. How does that actually work in the body? What's the mechanism?
Well, protein's job in the body goes way beyond just building and repairing muscles. It's actually essential for fueling all of our cells. Every single organ, every type of tissue, and all the hormones our bodies produce rely on amino acids, which, as we've mentioned, are the fundamental components of protein.
Okay.
If we're not getting enough protein in our diet, our body has to start breaking down muscle tissue to get those necessary amino acids for other critical functions.
Ah, so it sacrifices muscle.
It does, in a way.
Yeah.
This process puts a strain on the body at a cellular level, and that strain can show up as fatigue.
So it's like the body is having to use its reserves just to keep going, and that leaves us feeling drained.
Exactly. And there's also a really important link between the protein we eat and how stable our blood sugar levels are. If our meals are mostly carbohydrates, things like, a lot of toast, crackers, or sugary cereals, we might get a quick burst of energy.
Yep, the sugar rush.
But that's often followed by a pretty significant dip, a crash a few hours later. That crash is often your body signaling that it needs more balance, and protein plays a vital role in providing that sustained energy release, slowing down sugar absorption.
That makes a lot of sense. I definitely recognize that mid-morning slump after maybe having like just a pastry for breakfast or something.
Right. And research has actually shown that older adults who consistently had lower protein intake reported feeling significantly more daytime fatigue, and this was even when they were getting what they thought was enough sleep at night.
That's pretty compelling. So even if you're getting those hours in bed, if you're not fueling your body properly during the day, you're still going to struggle with that feeling of exhaustion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this symptom is so often overlooked. It doesn't always feel like that classic physical weakness we talked about with muscle loss. Sometimes it's more like a persistent brain fog, feeling mentally heavy, or just needing to take a nap after even doing something that doesn't feel particularly strenuous.
So that ongoing feeling of being worn out, even when you've rested, might not just be a sign of getting older. It could be your body saying, hey, I need more of that repair and energy fuel protein.
Exactly. And the good news is, often just making a relatively small increase in the amount of protein you're having with each meal, maybe just another 10 to 15 grams.
Just 10 or 15 grams.
It doesn't have to be huge. That amount per meal can really make a noticeable difference in your energy levels throughout the day for many people.
So it's not necessarily about drastically increasing how much food you're eating overall, but really being more mindful about making sure you're including that protein component at each meal.
Precisely. Think of it as focusing on the quality of what you're eating, the balance, not just the quantity. Remember, having good energy levels really impacts your overall quality of life.
Oh, hugely.
When your body has the nutrients it needs, you can move through your day with more purpose, more mental clarity, and ultimately with more joy, rather than just feeling like you're trying to survive until you can rest again.
That's a really great way to think about it. Energy for joy, not just survival.
Okay, so we've covered muscle loss and that persistent fatigue. What's the third subtle way our body might be sending us a protein SOS?
Okay, the third sign is something that many people might not immediately link to their diet at all. Noticing thinning hair and nails that break easily. Essentially, skimping on protein could be silently dimming your mental spark and mood. Oh, wait, sorry, that's ahead. I mean, thinning hair and brittle nails.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think most of us probably assume those kinds of issues are just, part of aging or maybe related to the specific hair and nail products we use. Hormones, maybe.
And while age and external factors and hormones certainly do play a role, changes in your hair and nails can also be a quiet signal that your body is looking for more protein.
How does that connection work? What's protein got to do with hair?
Well, both our hair and our nails are primarily made up of a specific type of protein called keratin.
Ah, keratin. Heard of that. Yeah. When your body isn't getting enough protein from your diet, it has to make some choices about where those limited resources are going to be used. It prioritizes the vital organs, your heart, your lungs, your brain, to keep you functioning.
Right, survival first.
Exactly. Things like hair and nails, while they're important for our appearance and for protection, are considered less essential for immediate survival. So when protein intake is low, they can kind of end up on the back burner, nutritionally speaking.
That makes sense. The body has to look after the most critical systems first. It's rationing.
Exactly. And over time, this sort of protein rationing can show up in a few visible ways. You might start to notice more hair coming out when you brush it, or in the shower drain. Your hair might seem to be growing back more slowly than it used to, or your fingernails might become more prone to chipping, bending easily, or even developing ridges on the surface. Some people also notice that their nail beds look a little paler than usual, lacking that healthy pink color.
So those little changes that we might just shrug off thinking, oh, my nails are just weak, could actually be a sign of something more going on internally with protein.
That's right. And it's not just something people have anecdotally noticed. Experts in skin and hair, dermatologists, have pointed out that in many cases where older adults, particularly women, experience hair thinning, the underlying reason isn't just hormonal changes, but can also be linked to consistently not getting enough protein in their diet over a period of time.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I can imagine that experiencing thinning hair can have quite an emotional impact on people. It can affect how you feel about yourself and maybe make you feel older, even though the root of the problem might actually be something you can address through your diet.
Absolutely. For many people, their hair is really tied to their sense of identity and feeling vital. So noticing these changes can be quite upsetting. The good news is that making sure you're getting enough of what we call complete proteins, those that contain all 9 of the essential amino acids, our body can't make itself.
Right, the essential ones.
Can really help support the strength and health of your hair and nails.
And what are some good sources of those complete proteins again?
Great sources include things like eggs, fatty fish such as salmon, dairy products like milk, cheese, yogurt, lean meats like chicken and turkey, soy products like tofu and edamame, and even grains like quinoa.
Okay, good list.
So if you've been dealing with frustrating hair or nail issues recently, it might be worth taking a look at whether you're getting enough of these protein-rich foods in your daily diet, instead of just focusing on external treatments like special shampoos or nail hardeners.
Which might help a bit.
They might help superficially, yeah, but sometimes the deeper answer really lies in what you're nourishing your body with from the inside out.
That's a really important point to keep in mind. Feed your hair from within. Okay, so we've talked about muscle loss, persistent tiredness, and changes in our hair and nails. What's the fourth subtle sign that might be a hint we need to boost our protein intake?
The fourth sign is something that affects our body's ability to repair itself. Noticing that wounds are taking longer to heal than they used to, or that you seem to be bruising more easily than is typical for you.
Yes, I can definitely see how that would be a concern. When you get a little scrape or a bump and it just seems to linger and take forever to get better. Or those random bruises that appear and you think, where did that come from?
Exactly. Whereas in the past, a minor cut might have healed up pretty quickly, maybe in a day or two. You might now find that even small injuries seem to stick around. Scabs take a week or longer to go away. Or you're noticing those mysterious bruises showing up on your arms and legs without any clear cause. This can often be connected to not getting enough protein, which, as we touched on earlier, is actually more common than a lot of people realize, especially among older adults who might have a smaller appetite overall, or perhaps those who are avoiding entire food groups like meat and dairy for various reasons.
So what's the link between protein and our body's natural healing abilities? How does that work?
Well, protein plays a really critical role in rebuilding skin, blood vessels, and all that connective tissue that holds us together. Every time your body is trying to recover from any kind of injury, whether it's a bruise under the skin, a cut on your finger, or even something more serious like a pressure sore, it's protein that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes to make new cells and structures.
Okay, so it's the construction crew.
Exactly, the construction crew for repairs. Without a good supply of protein, that whole healing process can really slow down. Plus, your skin and tissues themselves can become a bit weaker and more fragile overall, which can actually make you more prone to getting injured in the first place.
That makes perfect sense. If you don't have the necessary building blocks, the repairs are naturally going to take longer and the structure might be weaker.
Exactly. And research has actually indicated that older adults who weren't getting enough protein in their diets had a significantly higher risk of experiencing skin breakdown and didn't recover as well after surgeries or illnesses.
That really highlights that this isn't just a minor inconvenience or a cosmetic issue. Slow wound healing can potentially lead to more serious problems like infections and longer overall recovery times, which nobody wants.
Absolutely. But the encouraging thing, just like with the other signs we've discussed, is that there's often a way to improve this by making sure you're getting enough high-quality protein in your diet, and ideally combining it with other supportive nutrients like vitamin C, zinc, and omega-3 fatty acids.
Ah, the support team.
Yeah, the support team. You're really giving your body the resources it needs to repair and protect itself more effectively.
So it's like every meal is an opportunity to not just give your body energy, but also to provide it with the raw materials it needs for ongoing maintenance and repair work, the healing materials.
Precisely. So if you've noticed that you're not bouncing back from little injuries as quickly as you used to, or that you seem to bruise very easily, it's definitely worth taking a closer look at your daily protein intake and considering if you might need to make some adjustments.
That's really good information to have. Okay, so we've reached the fifth sign, and you mentioned earlier that this is perhaps the most surprising one and often gets missed. What is it?
Yes. The fifth subtle sign that your body might be asking for more protein has to do with something that isn't directly physical in the same way the others are.
Yeah.
It's about your mood, your mental clarity, and just that general feeling of being a little bit off.
That's intriguing. So we're talking about things like feeling more easily irritable or just not having that same mental sharpness, maybe a bit foggy.
Exactly. Have you ever had those days where You just don't quite feel like yourself. You're not necessarily unwell, but your thoughts feel a bit cloudy. You're finding it harder to focus on conversations or tasks.
Uh-huh.
You might be more quick to feel frustrated or perhaps more emotionally sensitive than usual. And that usual spark of joy or motivation just seems to be missing.
Yes, absolutely. I think everyone has those kinds of days now and then. It's easy to just put it down to stress or not enough sleep or just chalk it up to one of those days.
And that's a very natural reaction. However, what many people, especially as they get older, might not realize is that protein actually plays a surprisingly important role in our brain chemistry.
Brain chemistry. Really? How does that connection work?
Well, your brain relies heavily on amino acids, those building blocks we've been talking about that come from the protein we eat, to produce vital neurochemicals or neurotransmitters.
Okay.
These include things like serotonin, which plays a key role in regulating our mood and feelings of well-being, often called the happy chemical.
Right.
Dopamine,
Yeah.
which is so important for our motivation, drive, and ability to focus. The reward chemical,
Uh-huh.
and norepinephrine, which helps with our alertness, concentration, and memory.
So if we're not getting enough protein,
Yeah.
our brain might literally not have the raw materials it needs to make enough of these important chemicals that affect how we feel and think.
Precisely. And when your diet consistently doesn't provide enough of those essential amino acids, the building blocks, the result can be these subtle but powerful shifts in how you feel. You might experience that ongoing feeling of fogginess in your thinking, a lack of motivation for activities you usually enjoy, a sense of just feeling a bit disconnected, or even a low-level sadness or irritability that just doesn't seem to lift.
And the real risk here, I suppose, is that people might misinterpret these symptoms. They might think it's just a natural part of aging, or maybe stress catching up, or even assume they're experiencing something like mild depression, when the underlying issue could actually be related, at least in part, to their dietary protein intake.
That's a really important point. Research has actually shown correlations. Older adults with lower protein intake were more likely to report feelings of anxiety, apathy, or a lack of interest in things, even some mild issues with their thinking and memory, especially when they were also low in other important brain nutrients like B12 and omega-3 fatty acids.
So it's not to say that simply eating more protein is going to be a magic cure for all mood issues or cognitive decline. Of course not.
No, definitely not. Other factors are hugely important.
But it sounds like it can be a really significant missing piece for many people, helping their bodies regulate these natural functions that are so essential for clear thinking, emotional balance, and a stable mood.
Exactly. And perhaps the most important thing to take away from this is a potential shift in perspective. Feeling a bit off might not mean you're inherently unwell or that it's just an inevitable part of aging. It could actually be a sign that your body is simply underfueled and needs better nutritional support, particularly with protein.
That's a really empowering thought. It gives you something actionable. Okay, so to recap, we've looked at 5 subtle signs. That muscle loss that happens without you trying, that persistent tiredness, even when you think you've slept enough, changes in your hair and nails, slower healing or easier bruising, and these shifts in your mood, mental clarity, or just that general feeling of being off. It's fascinating how these might seem like completely separate things, but together they could be your body's quiet way of asking for more of those essential building blocks, for more protein.
They really are interconnected, aren't they?
Uh,
All suggesting that the body's working hard, but maybe doesn't have all the resources it needs to function at its best.
And the great thing is it doesn't sound like we need to make huge, drastic changes to our diets or suddenly start eating like a bodybuilder or anything extreme.
Not at all. That's often unsustainable anyway.
Right. It's really about understanding what our bodies need as we get older and addressing these potentially small, subtle deficiencies.
Precisely. Making small, consistent adjustments can often lead to some really significant positive changes over time.
Things like making a point to have some protein with your breakfast, maybe switching cereal for eggs or yogurt, perhaps adding a scoop of protein powder to your morning smoothie if you have one, having an extra egg at lunchtime, or choosing fish for dinner a couple of times a week. These little tweaks could potentially have a really big impact on our strength, our energy levels, how clearly we think, and just that overall feeling of our body working well for us again.
Absolutely. It's about being more conscious and deliberate about including protein sources in our daily meals and snacks.
Now, if any of these 5 signs we've talked about today really struck a chord with you, maybe this is a good moment to just pause for a second and think about what you're going to eat next. Could you easily add a little more protein to that meal? What was the most surprising connection we made today for you? Was it the hair and nails, the mood connection? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, reflecting on these subtle signals can be a really helpful first step towards making positive changes in your daily habits, even small ones.
And if this deep dive into these often overlooked signs has helped you feel a bit more informed and maybe more in control of your health journey, please do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our future discussions.
We appreciate that.
In our next exploration, we're going to be sharing some really practical tips for incorporating more protein into your daily routine, especially if you're over 60. We'll talk about easy meal ideas and some helpful advice on when to eat protein to get the most benefit. Timings matter too. So you definitely won't want to miss that.
That's going to be a really practical one.
And before you go, if any of these signs felt familiar, please do give us a like. It really helps us reach more people who might be looking for this kind of information.
Liking and subscribing helps us continue to bring you these deep dives into health topics.
And just to leave you with one final thought to consider, take a moment to think about how these subtle shifts, the tiredness, the weaker grip, the slower healing might have shown up in your own life, or maybe in the lives of people you care about. What small, protein-rich change could you explore starting today, even just for one meal, and what kind of difference might that make for you in the long run?